Sleep refused to claim me properly that night. Each time I drifted off, I found myself back in that underground chamber, iron masked figures looming over me, their chanting a terrible drone that vibrated through my bones. The chalk sigils burned white hot in my mind's eye, and the screams of spectral children echoed through the darkness. I jerked awake, sweat-soaked sheets twisted around my legs like restraints. Moonlight cut a silver path across my bedroom floor. The clock on the mantel showed 3:30, the dead hour, when the veil between worlds thins to a gossamer. From the other room came the soft, steady breathing of Elowen. She'd insisted on taking the settee, despite my protests, arranging herself beneath a worn woolen blanket with quiet dignity of a woman accustomed to discomfort. Her resilience humbled me. She'd lost a husband, been driven from her home, and now hunted for her missing son through a city that devoured children like hers. Yet she endured. I eased myself up, wincing as my damaged knee protested. The cultists had been careful not to mark me visibly, but my body felt as though it had been pounded with hammers. I limped to the window, parting the curtains to gaze out at Manchester's sleeping form, a beast of brick and iron, exhaling plumes of smoke even in slumber. Somewhere out there, Crick was hiding. Somewhere out there, gentlemen in fine clothes plotted around boardroom tables, coldly assigning sigils in their factories and workplaces, using the spirits of the dead to improve productivity and reliability, increasing their profits, all the while understanding that such actions meant death and suffering to Manchester's poor. One moment from my captivity returned with brutal clarity. The leader leaning close, iron mask inches from my face, whispering, "The children feed her hunger, Mr. Uskwood." I pressed my forehead against the cold glass, watching my breath fog the pain. How many of Manchester's elite belonged to the Arcanum Ferro? How deep did their influence reach? Into the police force? The courts? The press? The thought chilled me more than the winter air seeping through the window frame. We were not just hunting a demon, but the very men who built this city. Dawn crawled reluctantly across Manchester, the morning fog so thick it seemed to swallow the sun whole. I'd managed perhaps 2 hours of fitful sleep before giving up entirely, retreating to my desk to copy Samuel Carr's sigils into my notebook. Elowen emerged from the sitting room as I brewed tea, her hair loosely pinned, dark circles beneath her eyes suggesting her night had been no more restful than mine. She accepted the chipped cup I offered without comment, warming her hands around it. "I think we should begin at Angel Meadow," I said, setting a plate of dry toast between us. "It's where Crick was last seen, and where the tunnel entrance." A sharp rap at the door cut me short. My hand moved instinctively to the walking stick propped against my chair. "Stay here," I murmured, limping to the door. Through the peephole, I saw Constable Hawthorne's broad, weathered face. Relief and wariness mingled as I unbolted the door. "Christ, Uskwood, you look like death walked over." He stepped inside, removing his helmet. Snowflakes melted on the shoulders of his uniform. His eyes flicked to Elowen, then back to me with a raised eyebrow. "Mrs. Carr," I explained quickly, "her son is missing. We were just discussing where to begin our search." Hawthorne's expression darkened. "That's why I'm here, though I shouldn't be." He lowered his voice. "Been trying to reach you since yesterday. 7 children gone from Angel Meadow this past week, 1 each night, like clockwork." The toast turned to ash in my mouth. 7? Elowen's cup clattered against the saucer. "What ages?" "Between 8 and 12. 4 boys, 3 girls." Hawthorne sank into the chair, looking older than his years. "Last one was taken just before dawn. Little girl named Mary Jones, daughter of a loom operator." I exchanged a glance with Elowen. "Why haven't I seen this in the papers?" Hawthorne's laugh was bitter. "That's the other reason I'm here. Got pulled into the superintendent's office yesterday. told to keep it quiet, focus on more pressing matters. He leaned forward. Then, I saw Lord Whittaker himself leaving through the back door. Whittaker? Elowen's voice was barely audible. Of Whittaker's cotton mill? Hawthorne nodded grimly. Every missing child has family working at his mill, and not a word in the press. The Courier should have been all over this, but nothing. The room seemed suddenly colder. I thought of the iron masks, the underground chamber, the cultists' words, the children feed her hunger. Hawthorne, I said carefully, what do you know about a group called the Arcanum Ferro? His brow furrowed. Nothing, should I? I hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. I believe they're connected to these disappearances, and to what happened to Mrs. Carr's husband. And my son, Elowen added softly. Hawthorne looked between us. You're talking about more than just kidnappings, aren't you? This is like that business at the foundry, and the medium. I nodded slowly. Much more. And I think it goes to the very top of Manchester society. Christ, Hawthorne rubbed his face. If you're right, and if Whittaker's involved, he practically owns half the city council. The chief constable plays cards at his club. Then we'll need to be careful, I said. After Hawthorne departed, a heavy silence settled between us. Elowen stood by the window, watching snowflakes drift past the glass, her reflection ghostly in the pane. Samuel used to be foreman at Whittaker's, she said finally, her voice barely audible. Before he changed, before he joined them. I closed my notebook, tucking it inside my coat. Then you know the layout. She turned, eyes flashing. Every corridor, every stairwell, the machinery floor, the offices, even the cellars where they store the raw cotton. Her fingers twisted in her shawl. Samuel kept a set of keys. I still have them. We need to search that mill, I said, leaning on my cane. If the Arcanum is taking children from families who work there, there must be evidence, sigils, records, something to connect them. They'll be watching you now, Elowen warned. I nodded grimly. Which is why we go when they least expect it. Tonight, after midnight, the darkness will be our ally. Her face hardened with resolve. If Crick came back to Angel Meadow, he might have gone somewhere familiar, somewhere he felt safe. Or somewhere he could watch them, I added, to protect the others. Elowen's hand found mine, her grip fierce. Then we'll find what they're hiding, together. The fog hung thick as wool batting over Angel Meadow, muffling our footsteps as we approached Whittaker's mill. Its chimney loomed above us, a black finger against the night sky. No smoke tonight, the beast slept. But I felt its presence watching, nonetheless. There, Elowen whispered, pointing to a narrow window at the mill's eastern corner. Foreman's entrance. Samuel showed me once. I followed her through the alleyway, my cane testing each step before I took it. My knee throbbed in the damp, but Elowen moved with surprising surety, as if the darkness held no fears for her anymore. The key still works, she said, hearing the lock click. The door groaned as she pushed it inward, old wood scraping against stone floor. We froze, listening for any response, but heard only the wind sighing through the eaves. After you, I murmured, offering her a hand. Inside, the mill held its breath. Moonlight filtered through the high windows, casting the looms in silver-blue shadows. They stood in rows like slumbering sentinels, their iron frames gleaming dully. The scent of cotton dust and machine oil filled my nostrils. Look, Elowen breathed, pointing at the nearest loom. I leaned closer, running my fingers along the cold iron. Etched into the frame, where only someone looking for might find it. A sigil, identical to those in my notebook. A spiral with 3 barbs, like a twisted flame. They're everywhere, I whispered, moving down the row. Each machine bore the mark, some fresh carved, others worn with age and countless hands. We moved deeper into the mill, past silent machines that seemed to watch our progress. On the wall beside the overseer's platform, I found a larger sigil, cod-like concentric circles with angular symbols. I'd seen one similar in the forge crypt. The foreman's office is upstairs, Elowen said. That's where they'd keep the records. The stairs creaked beneath our weight. At the landing, a heavy oak door stood closed but not locked. Inside, a Spartan room contained a desk, filing cabinet, and shelves lined with ledgers. I lit a small candle, shielding its flame with my hand. Employee records, I muttered, scanning the shelves. Recent ones. Elowen pulled down a thick leather-bound volume. Here, last quarter's wages and assignments. We spread it open on the desk. Page after page of names, addresses, positions, and wages. The lives of hundreds reduced to columns of figures. Elowen's finger traced down the list. This one, she said, tapping a name. Mary Thistlewood. Her boy Tom went missing 3 nights ago. She turned the page. And here, William Fenton. His daughter was the first to vanish. I examined the entries more closely. Beside each name that Elowen had identified was a small mark, almost invisible, unless you knew to look for it. A tiny triangle with a dot at its center. They're marking them, I said, feeling sick. We slipped out of the mill like thieves, though what we'd stolen was knowledge rather than coin. The ledger felt heavy in my coat, its pages filled with the names we sought. Back at home, Elowen spread the book across my desk while I stoked the fire against the December chill trying to seep in. 253 employees, she said, her finger tracing down the columns. Most live in Angel Meadow or nearby. And 7 children gone already. I poured us each a measure of brandy. My hands shook slightly, not from fear but from rage. Elowen accepted the glass but didn't drink. We need to warn them all. More than warn them. I pulled out my notebook, flipping the page to where I copied Crick's protective sigils. We need to arm them. We spent the next hour copying the symbols onto scraps of paper, crude but serviceable. I explained what little I understood of their power. These won't stop Travilla entirely, I said, but they might confuse her, slow her down. And what of William? Elowen's voice cracked slightly. While we're warning others, he'll still be out there alone. I placed my hand over hers. If anyone knows how to hide from her, it's Crick. And someone in Angel Meadow might have seen him. We'll be asking about him at every door. Then we start at dawn, she said firmly. I nodded agreement. The Arcanum will be watching, but they won't expect us to move so quickly. We worked through the night, plotting our route through the maze of Angel Meadow's streets. By the time the eastern sky began to lighten, we had our plan. Stay together, I insisted, checking my pocket watch. If the Arcanum learns what we're doing, they already taken everything I love, Elowen said simply. I have nothing more to lose. I nodded, understanding the steel beneath her quiet voice. We gathered our papers, my silver-tipped cane, and stepped out into the pre-dawn chill, ready to race against shadows and time. Morning light struggled through Manchester's perpetual haze as Elowen and I made our way into Angel Meadow. The air tasted of coal dust and desperation. Our first stop was a crumbling tenement on Back Ancoat Street. The woman who answered, Mrs. Perkins, had shadowed eyes and 3 small children clinging to her skirts. When I mentioned the disappearances, she crossed herself. "My sister's boy was taken 2 nights past," she whispered, glancing nervously at her own children. "Just vanished from his bed, he did." Elowen showed her the protective sigil. "Draw this above your doors and windows. It may help to keep your children safe." The woman's hands trembled as she took the paper. "Is it witchcraft?" It's protection, I said firmly. And have you seen a boy called William, also known as Crick? About 10 years old, pale eyes? She shook her head, but took the sigil and promised to use it. As morning wore into afternoon, we visited dozens more homes. Some slammed doors in our faces, others listened with wide-eyed terror. A burly worker on Blakely Street spat at my feet. "You're that mad copper, ain't you? Uncanny Uskwood," he laughed harshly. "Bringing your devil marks to decent folk." But for every skeptic, there were 3 desperate parents willing to try anything. By midday, half of Angel Meadow was whispering about us, the limping ex-inspector and the fierce-eyed woman drawing strange symbols on doorways. "They're listening," Elowen murmured as we left narrow alley to back-to-back houses. "I can feel it." I nodded. The Arcanum Ferro would have eyes everywhere, but speed was our ally. At the time they realized what we were doing, the sigils would already be in place. We paused at a small pie shop to rest my aching leg. That's when I spotted him. Everard Pennyman, immaculate as always, watching us from across the street. When our eyes met, he smiled and crossed over. "Inspector Uskwood, what a delightful coincidence." His gaze slid to Elowen. "And who might this charming lady be?" "None of your concern, Pennyman," I growled. "Oh, but everything about you is my concern these days." He pulled out his notebook. "The whole of Angel Meadow is abuzz. Strange markings appearing on doorways, warnings of child snatchers in the night. Your handiwork, I presume?" Elowen stepped forward. "I'm Elowen Carr. My husband was Samuel Carr, former foreman at Whitaker's Mill." I winced. Pennyman's eyes lit up like a child at Christmas. "Samuel Carr? The man found mauled to death near Alderley Edge? How fascinating." He scribbled frantically. "And what brings you to Manchester's most squalid district, Mrs. Carr?" "My son is missing," she said simply. "We're looking for him." "And drawing occult symbols while you're at it." He arched an eyebrow. "The mill owners won't be pleased, you know. Bad for morale, spreading panic." "The mill owners can go to hell," I said, rising to my feet. Pennyman's smile widened. "Many would say they already have." "I'll be watching your progress with great interest, Uskwood. This might be your most entertaining spectacle yet." He tipped his hat and sauntered away, already composing tomorrow's headline in his head. "He'll make things harder," Elowen said quietly. I nodded grimly. "Yes, but we don't have time to worry about Pennyman. We have more doors to knock on before nightfall." Darkness descended quickly over Angel Meadow, bringing with it a fog that curled around street lamps like ghostly fingers. My breath clouded before me as I checked my pocket watch. "We should head back," I told Elowen. "We've covered most of the northern tenements." She nodded, pulling her shawl tighter. The temperature had plummeted with the sun, leaving the cobblestones slick with frost. We'd visited nearly 100 homes since morning, our voices hoarse from explaining the protective sigils. "Tomorrow we'll—" A piercing scream cut through the night, not the usual drunken shouting of Angel Meadow, but the primal howl of a mother's terror. "This way," I gasped, already limping as fast as my damaged leg would allow. Elowen sprinted ahead, following the sound to a narrow terraced house on Cooper Street. The door stood ajar. Inside, a young woman, barely 20, was tearing at her hair, shrieking as she stared at an empty crib. "She's gone! My Lily's gone!" Her eyes were wild with panic. "I only stepped out for water just a minute." Elowen rushed to the crib while I scanned the room. A chill draft drew my attention to the window, open despite the bitter cold. Beneath it, wet footprints glistened on the floorboards. "There," I pointed at the window. Outside, in the fog, a dark figure moved, something small clutched to its chest. I lunged for the window, throwing it wider. "Stay with her," I called to Elowen. "No," she said fiercely, already climbing through after me. We go together. We tumbled into the frozen alley behind the house. The fog was thicker here, but I caught a glimpse of movement, a dark figure turning the corner, the infant's white blanket visible for an instant. "There!" Elowen cried. We gave chase through the maze of Angel Meadow's back alleys, our feet slipping on icy cobbles. The figure moved with unnatural speed, always just ahead, just visible enough to follow. "It's leading us somewhere," I panted, my bad leg screaming in protest. "I don't care," Elowen hissed. "We're not letting it take another child." The figure darted down a narrow passage between warehouses. As we followed, the fog closed in around us like a shroud, and somewhere ahead, a baby's cry echoed through the darkness. The fog thickened with each turn we took, swallowing the feeble glow of distant gas lamps. I lost sight of the figure, but the infant's cries guided us deeper into Angel Meadow's tangled heart. "This way," I wheezed, my lungs burning with each frigid breath. My walking stick slipped on the icy cobbles, nearly sending me sprawling. Elowen grabbed my arm, steadying me. "Listen." The baby's wails echoed from multiple directions, bouncing off brick walls and chimney stacks. A cruel trick. The sound fractured and multiplied in the fog. "We need to split up," Elowen said, her voice trembling but resolute. "No, that's what it wants." But she was already moving, disappearing into a white wall of mist. "I'll go right," her voice called back, already distant. I pressed forward, following what I hoped was the true source of the crying. My leg throbbed with each step, an old wound, a constant reminder of my first encounter with forces beyond understanding. Something shifted in the fog ahead. A figure, tall, unnaturally so, loomed before me. Not our quarry, but something else. The silhouette of a woman with elongated limbs and a neck that twisted at an impossible angle. "Inspector," it whispered, the voice like rusted hinges. "Still chasing shadows." I gripped my cane tighter, thumb ready on the concealed silver spike. "Where's the child?" The figure drifted closer. Through the fog, I glimpsed a face with hollow sockets where eyes should be. I backed away, my heel catching on uneven stone. The apparition reached for me with fingers like twisted wire. I swung my cane through it, connecting with nothing but icy mist. A laugh rippled through the fog, and suddenly the shape was gone. More phantoms emerged as I pushed forward. Gaunt children with coal-blackened faces. A hanged man swinging from nothing. Each spoke with the same voice, taunting, mocking my pursuit. "Elowen," I shouted, suddenly aware of how alone I was. The alleyways had become a maze, each turn leading to identical passages. My legs seized with pain, forcing me to lean against a soot-stained wall. The baby's cries had stopped. Fear clutched at my throat. Had I failed? Was this all a diversion while... "Alaric!" Elowen's voice cut through the fog, distant but clear. I pushed off the wall, ignoring the fire shooting up my thigh. "Keep shouting." "This way, quickly." I followed her voice, limping faster than I thought possible. The fog parted momentarily, revealing a narrow ginnel between two derelict warehouses. At its end stood Elowen, her face pale in the darkness. I saw it enter there. She pointed to steps set into the ground, steps leading into the shadows between the mills. At the end of the alley, a tall brick wall supported the buildings. It was a dead end, no escape. I reached her side, breath ragged. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. The fog. I saw Samuel. I saw my husband, standing there, watching me. But it wasn't him, her voice cracked. It was trying to lead me away. "Trevila's tricks," I muttered, drawing the silver flask from my coat. I took a swift swig of brandy before offering to Elowen. "They want to separate us." A faint whimper drifted up from the alleyway. The infant, still alive. "We go together," I said, gripping her hand. "Whatever waits down there." Elowen squeezed my fingers, her touch steadying my racing heart. together. The alley steps descended into absolute darkness. I struck a match, its feeble light revealing stone walls slick with moisture. The flame cast our shadows long and distorted against the brick. "Careful," I whispered as we crept forward. At the bottom of the steps, the match illuminated a passageway that stole the breath from my lungs. And at the end, a figure waited. And as we neared, we experienced the true horror of Angel Meadow. "Welcome," it said, in a voice I recognized from my nightmares. "We've been expecting you both." The figure at the end of the passage turned, and my blood froze. It was Crick, William, the boy who had saved me at Longburn Foundry. But something was terribly wrong. His small frame stood unnaturally straight. A smile that did not belong to him plastered to his face. The infant dangled from his arms like a rag doll, her tiny limbs swinging with each subtle movement he made. "Crick," I whispered, advancing slowly across the damp cobblestones. My cane tapped a nervous rhythm as I moved, each step measured and cautious. The fog thinned around us like a theatre curtain drawing back, and I saw his face clearly in the sickly yellow glow of the distant gas lamps. Those pale grey eyes that had once watched me with such intelligence, that had seemed to absorb every detail of the foundry blueprints, now gleamed with malevolent red light. Not a reflection, but an internal burning. His skin had taken on a waxy pallor, blue veins visible beneath. The coal dust that had once smudged his features was gone, replaced by an unnatural cleanliness that seemed more disturbing than the grime had ever been. "William!" Elowen lurched forward beside me, her voice breaking into jagged shards of desperation. Her long silver hair came loose from its binding, wild strands framing her face like a mourning veil. "My boy!" Her hands reached out, trembling violently, those ink-stained fingers that had caressed his forehead, now grasping at empty air between them. The thing wearing Crick's skin smiled, a terrible stretching of lips that revealed too many teeth, gleaming wetly in the darkness. It was a predator's grin, ancient and hungry, wearing the mask of a child's face with grotesque precision. The boy, who had been mute since witnessing his father's death, now seemed poised to speak, his jaw working mechanically, as though testing long unused hinges. "Your boy is gone," it said, the voice a horrific blend of child and woman. "Dravila wears him now." We had failed. Dravila had found him before us, and the horrible reality set in. Crick was now a prisoner of the demon in his own body. Elowen collapsed to her knees, hands outstretched. "Please, William, it's Mother. Come back to me." A laugh bubbled from the boy's throat, high and cruel. "He can hear you, screaming inside. Such delicious agony." I gripped my cane tighter. "Let him go, Dravila. He's just a child." "Children are vessels," the possessed boy hissed. "Pure, unmarked, perfect for filling." With unnatural grace, Crick's body rose from the ground, hovering several feet in the air. The infant began to wail again, tiny fists flailing. "Stay back, Inspector," Dravila commanded through Crick's mouth as I took a step forward, "or the child joins the others beneath the water." I froze, calculating. The silver tip of my cane might drive Dravila out, but not without harming Crick and the baby. My hand slipped to my other hip flask, holy water from St. Anne's Church. I unscrewed the cap slowly, keeping my eyes fixed on the floating boy. "You've taken enough children," I said, voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. "Manchester has fed you for centuries." "Fed me?" Dravila spat. "They offered me scraps while they built their temples of iron and smoke, desecrated my rivers, choked my skies." I flicked my wrist, sending an arc of holy water through the air. It spattered over Crick's face and chest. The effect was immediate. His body convulsed, a scream tearing from his throat, higher, more inhuman than before. The levitation faltered, his small form dropping several inches. Elowen rose to her feet, eyes locked on her son. "William," she called, voice gentle but firm. "I know you're in there. Fight her, my brave boy." Something shifted in Crick's face, a flicker of recognition, of desperate awareness. For a moment, the malevolent light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by fear and pain. "Mother?" The voice was Crick's own, small, broken. "Yes, love, I'm here." Elowen took a careful step forward. "Come back to me." Crick's arms trembled. The baby slipped from his grasp. Elowen lunged, catching the infant before it struck the ground. She clutched it to her chest, backing away as Crick's body twisted in midair, contorting with unnatural angles. "You can fight her, Crick," I urged, ready another splash of holy water. "She's too strong," the boy whispered, tears streaming down his face. Then his expression hardened, features contorting back into Dravila's mask. "And if you come closer, Inspector, I'll snap his spine like I did the medium. Feel how her body broke under my touch." I halted, remembering Miss Thorne's terrible end. "Where are the others?" I said. "Where have you taken the children?" "To my domain," said Dravila, "to serve me as those whom you have encountered this evening." "They live still?" "For now," said Dravila coyly. "What do you want, Dravila? Tell me what will make you stop." The fog had given way to cold rain now, droplets hissing as they struck Crick's unnaturally hot skin. Steam rose from his clothes, his body seeming to dissolve into the downpour. "I want it all to burn," Dravila growled, voice resonating despite the boy's diminishing form. "Every mill, every foundry, every machine that enslaves my kind, and scars my earth and poisons my water." Crick's body began to melt into the rain, becoming translucent, ghostly. "The factories," I pressed. "The Arcanum Ferro. Is that what you want destroyed?" A terrible smile spread across the fading face. "Burn it all down, Inspector, or I will take every child in this city, one by one." Then Crick, or what remained of him, dissolved completely into the rain, leaving nothing but empty air where he had hovered. Elowen's anguished cry echoed through the alley as she clutched the rescued infant, her son gone once more. The rain fell harder, washing away the last wisps of fog, leaving us alone with our failure and a terrible choice. We returned the infant to her mother's trembling arms. The woman wept, pressing desperate kisses to her daughter's face, whispering prayers of thanks. I watched Elowen's eyes as she witnessed the reunion, saw the hollow ache there, the unspoken question, would she ever hold her own child again? The journey back to my flat passed in silence. Rain hammered the cobblestones, soaking through our clothes, but neither of us quickened our pace. What did physical discomfort matter now? "You'll take my bed," I said as I unlocked the door. "I'll stay by the fire." Elowen didn't argue. Her face was carved from stone, eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the walls. I helped her remove her sodden coat, hung it by the hearth, and stoked the dying embers. "We'll find him," I said. She nodded mechanically. "Yes." I led her to my bedroom, lit the lamp, and left her to change into the dry nightclothes I placed there earlier. When she emerged briefly to collect a cup of tea, her hair hung loose around her shoulders, still damp from the rain. "Try to sleep," I said gently. The door closed with a soft click. I settled into my armchair, leg throbbing. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Crick suspended in the air, his small body a puppet for ancient malice. I saw the children of Manchester, sleeping in their beds, unaware of the shadow stretching over them. Burn it all down. Was that truly what Dravila wanted? the destruction of Manchester's industrial heart? Or was it merely vengeance against the Arcanum Ferro, who had bound and used her? Outside, the rain turned to sleet. Dawn was still hours away. I poured myself a measure of brandy and listened to the soft, muffled sound of Elowen's weeping through the bedroom door. I had failed her, failed Crick. But I would not fail again. The Arcanum Ferro had built their wealth on the bones of children. Perhaps it was time for their temples of industry to fall. And if I had to be the one to strike the match, so be it.